I think we've got a quorum.
Yeah.
Should we, do you want to go ahead and kick us off, Doug, and explain to everyone who may not be aware what the hell we're doing and why we're
Yeah,
here?
why we're here and why we're doing this thing. Well,
Yeah.
thank you everyone for joining us for episode 3 of the XTP Hustle. My name is Doug Winnie. My co-host Melissa Sassi is here with us as well. I'm
Hello,
coming.
everyone.
Yeah, I'm coming to you from the heartland of the United States in Kansas, and Melissa and Frida are coming to you from
Frida,
Puerto
say hi to
Rico.
Frida.
Hey,
Hello,
Frida.
Frida.
Hey, Frida. Be scared. Be very scared, Frida, with your owner.
So I'll give a quick introduction to our team. So the XTP Hustle is a startup journey where we're going to document and share our process of growing our startup to bring products to the world. And this is our team from our corporation. So Melissa, myself, is the Chief Learning Officer. Melissa is the CEO and founder. And we also have a number of other people. Aladdin, who's our Chief Technology Officer. Lala, who's here joining us here today as our Product Management Officer. And then on the product marketing and content side, we have Mohammed, Zied, and Mohammed Salah, and then Gabriel, who is a new addition focusing on core content creation for our project. So that is our team, but what we want to talk about today is what is XTP and where we can take our ideas for youth entrepreneurship and make that a reality to enable digital skills and inclusion across the globe. And today we're going to be focusing on our audience and what that audience is, where they are located, and how we can size and create opportunity for that audience. So the topic today, like I said, is audience. We're going to introduce our guests today, who we are very fortunate to come to our session today so that we can get some mentorship guidance around how we have identified our audience, presented it, and things that we can learn on how to reshape or to pivot where we're looking at with our audience. So we'll also then talk a little bit around our future topics, and then we can, if we have a time today, we'll then do some Q&A. So XTP is a modification of the phrase extrapreneurship, where we're looking to define what are going to be the core future skills of work. And that's a combination of various things, including professional development skills, but also where you're building entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial spirit, regardless of where you are, either in a corporation or outside on doing your own side hustle or anywhere across the globe. But when we look at entrepreneurship skills, it's focusing not necessarily on the technology itself, but what are the social and interactive skills that you need to have to be successful to build opportunity, regardless of where you are on the globe. So our hustle today, the XTP Hustle, is our reverse accelerator, which is interesting because an accelerator a lot of times happens in a silo. It happens in private, where you bring in mentors to talk to you, to consult with you, to give you real hard feedback on where you need to adapt and where you need to adjust your plan and your mission. But we're deciding to make that public so that other people can look at how a startup is formed, how you can get that really expert feedback to help develop and make your idea even stronger in the future. So while it puts Melissa and I in a very vulnerable spot, that vulnerability, we hope, will allow you to be more successful in what you're developing with your own ideas and hustles.
Yeah, so real quick, Doug, I think
Yeah.
what kind of inspired us to create this was, Doug and I are often, providing mentorship to, other people working on their side hustles. Everybody knows that, I run a startup program at IBM, and I'm very focused on empowering early stage startups in their businesses, essentially helping them make money. And in my past life at Microsoft, I did the same thing, but at the internet and energy access space. And as we started building up our business, both of us thought that instead of going through kind of a formal accelerator program, let's turn it on its head. Let's create our own, but let's let other people take part in it, so that they can learn how this stuff works as well. So it's interesting for me to be on the hot seat and me to hear feedback on my, on our ideas, which I'm really excited about. So thank you everyone for being here. Most of you know that I purposely did not tell you everything we were talking about. I purposely did not bring you fully into the loop on what you were mentoring us on, because I wanted it to be off the cuff. We wanted it to be, unscripted and, like it would be in a demo day where you don't know what you're going to get and you don't know what you're going to see, and you've got to give feedback on the fly right then and there.
And then that feedback today is going to, that's that vulnerability, that authenticity, and that sincere feedback that we get from you is going to be so important for how we adapt this and make this even better. Because I think any founder is if they don't have that opportunity to share, their idea is going to become too precious, and they're not going to be open to changes or new ideas to help make it better. So that's why we're doing this early and often. So today our topic is going to be around audience. So we have our general audience sizing that we're going to share with you today, but then also Melissa's going to dive into some specific components of our audience unique to Ethiopia, and some of the things we're going to be looking to do in that area. So Melissa, could you introduce our guests today, please?
Yes, I can. And I do want to let you know that, going forward, we will make sure that we have an Ethiopian guest with us every single session. So we'll talk about Ethiopia today. Hema might be thinking, as a marketing expert, well, wait a second, where are all the Ethiopian people? And I can't remember Lily's background, but we'll talk with Lily in a second about her background. We did have a professor who was going to join us today from Ethiopia, but she had to cancel at the last minute. Steve has a lot of great experience when it comes to Ethiopia, and I think our other experts are, very familiar with audiences or communities, or thinking about startup ecosystem. But what you'll see in the future is that every single session will have either Ethiopian youth, an Ethiopian professor, or an Ethiopian entrepreneur, so that we're really truly thinking about that concept of design thinking, user-centered design, and building a team that is uh, not only inclusive of our audience, but reflective of our audience. So with that, Lala, I'd love you to say a few words and introduce how you fit into the world. And I'd also, Lala, like you to tell us how old you are.
Yeah, so I'm Lella, I'm 15 years old, I'm based in Yorkshire in England. I'm extremely passionate for tech, and I've been working with Melissa in the IBM side of things, trying to get more student-related content over there. I've been helping plan new webinar series, and I'm also really interested in the world of tech for good. So when Melissa and Doug came to me and said, do you want to be involved in our new project, I was all over it, because it's exactly what I feel we need.
So we're really helping to kind of think about, how do we bring youth to the center? What you'll see in a minute is that youth is at the center of our entire initiative, and we see this as for youth, with youth, by youth. What you may not have noticed on our kind of team slide, and that's not all the team, by the way. Most of our team members, minus like me, Doug, and Mohammed Salah, we're all young people. I like to think I'm young at heart, but at the end of the day, it's very important for us to have a youth-centered design and youth-centered thinking, because our audience is youth, and we'll talk more about that in a second. All right, the infamous Tony. Tony, introduce yourself and share how you fit in the world.
Well, thanks so much, Melissa. And I'm one of the longer in the tooth, older panelists. Yes, to share some wisdom and experience. I often am told that I'm pretty much the mentality of a 12-year-old anyway. So I think that I should fit in all right from that perspective. I have a background in telecommunications and information technology. I'm active in social media, certainly working in cloud, cybersecurity, emerging tech like AI, and where that's going, and very interested in, where technology is going, and certainly impacts from COVID and what we're seeing out there. So really looking forward to the panel. My day job, I work as an enterprise account executive with Shaw Communications, and then certainly have a side hustle where I'm busy in a number of different fronts on the social media tech and space. And happy to be here today. Sorry
One of the
about being
many
late too. Yeah.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. One of the things of many that I appreciate about Tony is his telecommunications background. If you think about, you know, when we talk about digital skills and we talk about, how can, young people gain access to practical skills to prepare for the future of work. A lot of that is contingent upon people having access. So I really appreciate those of us who are out in the trenches, building out internet connectivity. And, because at the end of the day, how are you going to gain access to a mobile application? How are you going to gain access to, online learning if 49% of the world is not connected to the internet? So with that, I'd love to introduce a repeat guest. And by the way, we will be bringing Steve onto the XTP Hustle as often as Steve can make it. Steve, tell us a little bit about, your background and kind of village, the smart village concept that you've brought to life and you're continuing to bring to life, and shed a little bit of light on, kind of some of your passion for Ethiopia and maybe what the future is for you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mel. I appreciate that. So, again, my name's Steve Johans. I've got about 20 plus years of experience, kind of energy infrastructure, I'd call innovation. Started my career working with kind of big energy, big type projects. But I just have had a passion in my heart for over a decade now, actually almost 2 decades. Just the frustration I've had with the haves and the have-nots, and so I left big corporate and started really focusing on how can I help people that are in rural underdeveloped areas have access to better quality of life than they currently have. And so that just led me on a journey. I started and launched one company in India that Microsoft had put capital into, and Mel was involved in that when she was during her Microsoft days. Presently I've working with put together a team of leading global experts, and we're kind of going next level where we are planning to demonstrate one of the world's most advanced kind of innovative approaches to bringing what I call hyper innovative smart infrastructure development into rural communities, with a project that we're going to be doing in North Ethiopia, in the area just outside of Gondar. And matter of fact, I was just on a call before this with members of the folks there and the team from Ethiopia that will be empowering to do some of this work. Working with the U.S. Trade and Development Agency and other agencies and development banks, and I've gotten support to kind of follow this vision with what I call hyper innovation from the bottom up. And I think potentially, my belief is that the world is engineered incorrectly, and you're feeling it hit us right now in terms of the way it's kind of shaking and moving, and we just didn't engineer this world quite correctly from the beginning. With the central power systems and things in the last 150 years and how things have been done. I believe the answers are in reinventing the way infrastructure and connectivity and things work from the bottom up. And I think it holds the great promise that if we all start to think and operate more like villagers, reach back and help those in need, and that we will be the benefactors. They will teach us things that will go way beyond our own imagination in terms of how to build a better communities, better infrastructure, better ways of operating in our economies and things of that nature. So it's just something I'm very passionate about, and I continue to try to recruit smart people to help me with it. And we're excited about some of the things that we'll be able to talk more about in the coming weeks and months. It's always a pleasure to hang out with Mel and Doug, and any chance I get.
Awesome. So we'll have more to share. There is a very good reason why we are highlighting Ethiopia as kind of our test bed, if you will. And what I will tell you is, whether it's me, Doug, or others who are all involved in the team, we've led training programs on entrepreneurship, digital skills, and professional development all over the world. Last year, I personally did 52 events in 10 countries. And, one of the things that we're looking to do is take a lot of that content that all of us respectively have in our heads and, put that into something that is more usable by the masses versus relying on a webinar versus relying on, Melissa Sassi to personally be in your country. And, as some things continue to transpire in partnership with Steve, we'll have, some more news to share, but I'll just leave the carrot that there is a reason why we were focusing on Ethiopia in today's dive into, one of our audiences. All right, cool. With that, Hema, I met Hema recently, and she and I became fast friends. I invited her to one of my webinars that we had on Marketing 101 for technical audiences. And, she's passionate about marketing. She's passionate about audiences, and is just a wonderful human who also has a passion for education and ed tech platforms. So Hema, can you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, thank you, Melissa, for your kind words. Hello, everyone. Yeah, well, I'm Hema. I'm from Spain, but I'm based in the Netherlands. And what I do mainly is to help companies to improve their communications and starting to know their audience and their own personality inside the company, to define who they are as a company and the personality they want to develop inside, to connect with the right audience and have more human communication and more inclusive.
So Hema, you started to go out for a second, but I don't know if that was my internet connectivity.
Oh.
Doug, did you hear everything that Hema said, or was it just my internet?
No, I think it was just your internet. So, I mean,
Okay.
so Hema, like, are there specific types of companies that you provide the service to, or is it across the board?
Well, mostly startups, tech startups, but not because it's the only company that I do, it's because it's the ones that I like more. So I prefer to choose the companies that I like the product and I can learn. So then it's a win-win. I help them and they help me to learn.
It's if you can win on both sides, that works,
yes.
Especially if you're learning something.
Exactly.
So, more fun. And I can help in the communication inside the apps and the e-commerce, not only the communication with the customers in marketing, but also inside the tools. Because sometimes the problem is the people don't understand the tools. So you need to change the world and the way you communicate. And for me, this is very interesting.
I learned a lot when Hema went through a Marketing 101 session a few weeks ago. And I think when we talk about our marketing tactics, I look forward to incorporating and maybe even borrowing some of the recommendations that that Hema gave to us. With that, Neil and I partner together very frequently. Neil is both a thought leader in the tech space and the kind of guy you want to get stuck in an airport with for 4 hours. I mean, no one wants to get stuck in an airport, but if you're going to get stuck in an airport, like, make sure that airport has Neil in it. So Neil, introduce yourself to the crew.
Oh my God, I don't know how I can follow that, really. Yeah, I've often been called the life and soul of pretty much any party I go to, but my career in tech started at your age, Leela, when I was about 15, 16. So I did a degree in electronics. Well, not that it's any good to anyone now, but, and then I went off to, oh, my son's shouting in the background, I apologise. He's playing Fortnite. It's the only way I could bribe him to get out of my space, homeschooling. So anyway, yeah, so I did that, and my first job was IBM, the irony of it. And I grew up in central London, fixing typewriters and liquid cooled tape machines. Then I went to work for pretty much every big vendor in the financial services industry. Then I became deputy TO for a couple of banks, West LB, Deutsche, and a few others. And my dog's now saying hello. And then I started one of many startups, really. I've done 5 now to date. I'm a 6th. Some made a lot of money. Some lost a lot of money. So pretty much now I talk about technology because I'm still quite techie. I write about technology, advise about technology, and also work with people like Mel and Oracle, AWS, Google, Microsoft, whole shebang really, right across the board, and advise. So but I help try and get back into helping people on their journey. So, and that's a horrible word, and it's a very consultative word, but help them out and make sure that if they do make a mistake, someone's there to pick them up and go, well, you know what you did wrong, don't do it again, kind of thing. And help and help the youth of today who are going to be the leaders tomorrow. So
I've got one
that's
more thing
pretty
to. Sorry, Neil.
and I always have my wallet, Tony. Unlike
That's
some
what I
people.
was going to add.
You know
I
it.
was gonna
No,
add
you
one more
don't.
thing.
No, you don't.
And if you are at the
I've been
bottom
there.
of the deal and you have forgotten your wallet, he will pick up the tab.
So
I
fun
always
fact.
pick up the tab when I'm drinking
Yeah.
with you, Tony.
Yep. Fun fact: we were all
Sorry.
at an event once, and Tony forgot his wallet, and everyone had to pay for him. And yeah,
No,
it's
not everyone. Me, Mel.
oh yeah. Well, like, but I pay
Hashtag
you.
everyone. Yes.
But I
yes.
pay you, so that means that like I kind of paid too, right?
Yeah. But I love you, Tony. Anyway, man.
All right, cool. With that, Lily, it comes to us from the Internet Society, one of our flagship sponsors of the XTP Hustle, as a youth advocate. So, Lily, tell us about where you're from, what are you working on, what are you doing? Tell us your story.
Right. Hi, everyone, and good afternoon from Ghana. Accra, Ghana, that's the capital of Ghana. And in Ghana, we say Akwaba, which means welcome. So welcome everybody to Accra today. And I have a computer science background. I read computer science in school, and until January, I left my system engineering role in a company, and I took on a marketing strategy role. So for me this year, it's been a lot of finding my feet and learning marketing, everything about marketing. We are trying to build a trusted site, right, of places and businesses in Africa, so people can easily find what they're looking for when they're in Africa. And so for me, I've had to learn a lot this year about marketing, strategy, about audience, and quite a number of things. And on the side, everybody has a hustle. On the side, I also volunteer with the Hack Club Foundation, and I do community engagement. I'm in charge of jobs and internships at the Hack Club Foundation. What we do is to match skills and talent to the market here in West Africa. So that's it for me, and I'm excited to be here today to share. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lily. So yeah, this is our star-studded crew of mentors. So what we're going to do now is we're going to dive into a little bit about what is XTP Hustle, what are we building, who's our audience, what are some of the pain points of our audience, and then we're going to open it up to to our mentors to tell us what do you like, what do you not like, give it to us straight, be constructive. Don't make us cry, because we don't want to cry, but
don't cry in front of your dog. That's not good.
Yeah, so but just give it to us real. So with that, Doug.
All right. So the XTP Hustle is starting off with a global view, and then we'll go down into specific areas, focusing on Ethiopia, which Melissa will be able to talk about in just a second. Our problem statement is when we look at the youth population and the lack of digital literacy and entrepreneurial skills and spirit, that's where we feel that there's a gap in that generation, be able to be prepared for the future of work. So while there's a ton of content, most of it is disconnected. It's not practical. There isn't a gamified or approachable environment or workflow for people to engage with that and to be able to develop those real world skills as they're trying to create opportunities for themselves, as well as for their communities and partners. So while we're looking at this specifically, the problem is just exponentially greater for those that are women or girls that are living along these digital inclusion gaps that exist around the planet. So while we look at the existing measurements that we have here, the digital skills, they're not they're not required skills, and they're not often measured by the years of formal education that we currently have. And we have to instead look at digital skills as a disconnected version of this, and to look at what are the skills that are not taught in regular formal education that allow that entrepreneurial spirit to get created and be built with people in various communities. So digital intelligence, so that digital skills, the digital inclusion component of this, we might think it's like learn how to code, but it is so many more components to this that anyone that is looking to build that entrepreneurial, like personal hustle, what am I trying to do to develop an idea? It's much more than just that. It involves things like emotional intelligence. How do I develop literacy with media? How do I understand the basics of finance? Things like that. They are much more than just the quote hashtag learn to code, that we're trying to create content and a unified experience for people to be able to learn these and then apply that in their local communities. A lot of the barriers that we have experienced so far, as we've been talking and doing some research around this, the lack of nurturing of a lot of entrepreneurial skills, and the fact that so many of the youth that are trying to build these lack the real world, the work experience to have that common nomenclature to be able to engage in conversations with other people so that they can have a seat at the table. So we're looking to help establish content and resources to bridge that gap so that the youth that are looking to build that entrepreneurial opportunity for themselves, their families, or for their communities can start developing that with them. And so as a part of this, we're also looking to create those networking opportunities that people at various corners of the globe might not necessarily have, especially when they are in a situation where they could be younger, have some limitations in terms of travel, or also just geographical disconnects that we're trying to bridge as well. So when we look at professional development, again, we're focusing not just on the technical skills, but we're looking at all of the core entrepreneurial skills that will allow anyone to take an idea and create opportunity from that. Things like for digital skills, for things like design thinking and creativity, how to think mindfully about your audience and for yourself and for your team. So all the content we're trying to do here is generally we have all learned kind of on our own as we've developed our career, and we're trying to build one place where everyone can then learn these skills collaboratively with other mentors and with other peers to build that digital skills to be successful in their opportunities as well. Now, the current size of the market we're looking here, so while we have 1.5 billion youth currently home with COVID-19, because of school closures, we're looking to create some virtual opportunities here, not just to deal with the pandemic, but also looking about what opportunities we can create post-pandemic as people start coming out of whatever situation they are in at their homes. And while we have, a pretty giant audience in terms of smartphone markets, we also have to acknowledge that there are markets that have limited to no internet connectivity. So we have to make sure that whatever we build is going to be able to be inclusive of all areas, regardless of connectivity. So with that, we're going to then talk a little bit about Ethiopia. And Melissa, if you could take it from here.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that, I think came to light, during one of our sessions, the other day was around, all right, it's great that you've given us this worldview, but if you think about your audience as the world, you're going to end up being everywhere and nowhere. And, how do you hone a little bit into, even if this is not the only audience that you serve, how do you start to think about one particular audience as you refine that village mentality that Steve spoke about? And because of some of the activities that, Steve has underway, we've decided to kind of come together with some of the work that he's doing, and, we can share more of that over time. But we thought, let's ladder up into, something real and something specific, and something meaningful that can enable us to say, okay, it's not just the world that we're focusing on. Youth also means a big thing. So what specifically are we talking about? See this as our test and learn of where do we start? We could start so many places. We could start in the US. We could start in Tunisia, where I have a big, community. We could start in Pakistan, where I have a big community. But let's start small. Let's start in a specific location in Ethiopia where we know there's a need and we know we have a ready set opportunity. So with that, Doug, if you could move over to the next slide, that would be awesome. So what we've done here is we've started to look at, okay, from a specific demographic, 18 to 24 years of age. I haven't put the specific region because I think in many countries of the world, Ethiopia included, it's not good enough to just say, okay, our audience is Ethiopia, or our audience is, Ethiopians between the ages of 18 and 24. Keep in mind that as we continue in partnership with Doug and Steve to work on a few different things, we'll hone in the next time, on a specific region, and then we'll also start to put together some specific buyer personas that look at, their pain points, their frustrations. But overarchingly, if you think about across the country, youth between the ages of 18 to 24. So again, see that as our overarching audience. So around the world, as we look to launch, 18 to 24. And then honing in on specific audiences, because we know that in Tunisia, the US, Pakistan, Bangladesh, wherever I've worked, wherever we've all worked, wherever youth reside, their needs are a little bit different. Their languages are a little bit different. And so it's very important for us to think at a big picture, but also think about, okay, let's hone on something specific. So we started to look at some of the challenges of, youth in, so let's call it, Bethy. So let's call Bethy's in Ethiopia. And let's look at, what are some of the things that Bethy is faced with as a woman in Ethiopia, as a young person in Ethiopia. She's faced with challenges associated with staying in school. So there's a high dropout rate, and that exponentially impacts women and girls. What is expected of her, what she expects of herself, is very different than what is expected of her male counterpart. We also know that when it comes to focusing on a specific audience in Ethiopia, and let's call it the Amara district of Ethiopia, or the Amara region of Ethiopia, we know that that's a rural community. So the needs of that rural community are going to be a little bit different than the needs of the urban community. We also know that especially young people are impacted by the inability to get jobs in the formal sector. And so many of them are working in the informal sector. And that's impacting their ability to, grow into the leaders of tomorrow. I don't think we included some of the data from last time, but when we had our last session, we dove into kind of some big overarching themes of employment or unemployment when it came to women and girls, and where many women, as they grow older, where they are gravitating toward in terms of careers. If they do have a professional career, it might be in a support role versus a tech role or an engineering role, or something that might be, a STEM field. We also know that there's a big challenge, specifically in Ethiopia, and especially in the rural communities when it comes to practical skills. We know that's a worldwide challenge, but it's pronounced in many parts of Ethiopia, and especially in rural communities. we know that internet access is a challenge as well. And so, from a product perspective, we've been kind of thinking about, as we build out this product, how do we make sure that it resonates well and solves the challenges that are relevant to include women and girls, include those in rural communities, while understanding that not everybody has access to expensive data. While they may have smartphones, there are some things that we think that we can do, whether that's preloading our platform onto mobile devices, a variety of different things. But at the end of the day, making this real when it comes to putting a persona together in terms of, we've got the age, we've talked about that, we've given Bethy a name. It may not be Bethy, we'll figure out what the right name is. We've talked about location, which is the Amara district of, or Amara region of Ethiopia. We have begun to think about what is some of, her motivations. What is she motivated by? She's got pressure to create a family, she's got pressure to get married, but she also has things that she wants to achieve for her life. She wants a healthy life, she wants to get an education, she wants to be economically empowered. But there's a lot of things against her. And this is not just to say that our audience are women, because it's not. We think that this is an equal challenge for both male and females, but we want to be very gender inclusive. And we also want to talk about some of her frustrations. So what are some of the things that she's faced with? Again, we haven't mapped this out completely, but these are, kind of the initial building blocks of getting us to the point of saying, okay, here's what we know now. Here's what we know we need to put together in terms of that view where there's a picture of Gemma, or a picture of Bethy, the age of Bethy, where Bethy's located, some of the things that she's been challenged with. Doug, if you can move on to the next slide, unless you have any other comments you'd like to add in.
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question, Mel, by any chance?
Yeah, go ahead.
From what I've seen and I understand, we're looking about entrepreneurship at a younger age, and from my experience, startups and entrepreneurship have very, very deep-rooted traits. I think we've got two things we want to talk about, I guess. One is a cultural separation from a lot of the other outside of Ethiopia and other places, of how you enable to run a business, how do you get started, how do you move forward. But you've also got lots of common traits where they'll be the same wherever you are, wherever you are.
Right. That's exactly
so,
right. We kind of see this as a large platform that can be enabled anywhere on the planet, but also having, kind of those specific versions. I almost see it as kind of white labeled, if you will, because we know that in Ethiopia, for example, they're going to need to have specific language competencies, in, their dialect. And so making sure that we've got one platform that can be utilized anywhere and everywhere, but localizing it appropriately. So it's kind of that thinking global, acting local kind of thing. Does that make sense?
One thing to add is, when we think about the entrepreneurial spirit versus the entrepreneurial function, I think to your point, the function of startups and the development and just the logistics of that are going to be very geographically specific based on local laws and policies and things like that. Do you feel that the spirit of entrepreneurship is generally universal, or do you also see that to be a difference geographically?
I think it's more like, I mean, it's, if you run a startup here, you can run a startup in Joburg, Asia, America, wherever it may be. You'll come across the same similar challenges, from a business commercial perspective, but you're going to have local idiosyncrasies for them, barriers, right? You're going to have barriers for adoption, for progression, for scale up. Where the barriers, I guess, will be inherently different from, say, for example, the UK to, say, Ethiopia. There's no barriers for tech, right? But there will be in Ethiopia, plus there'll be cultural barriers, I think.
I think you're
Not
absolutely right. I think that when it comes to cultural barriers, I often see that, the way that different people view risk is different around the world. And, a lot of parents, depending upon, your class and the education of your family and some other dynamics, you know, uh, being an entrepreneur is scary. I'll take an example of Pakistan. Um, in Pakistan, a lot of young people are pushed to be doctors and engineers, etc. And when they choose the entrepreneurial path, their parents don't understand it. And they're also ready for them to get married. They're ready for them to have children. And so one of the things that the National Incubation Center in Pakistan does in order to reduce that bias of youth centered ventures is to bring the parents into the center to talk about entrepreneurship so that they can also understand the importance of having entrepreneurial spirit and empowering their youth in ways that they may not realize, with a change in their language, by letting them understand what are they building, why are they building it, why is it important to instill these different ways of thinking. I see the same thing happening in Tunisia, where and I see it in Bangladesh, I see it all over the place, where your parents and your community play a big role in, well, oh, your kid's not going to be an engineer, oh well, maybe they're not going to get a good job. And there's a lot of, I think, deep seated pressure that happens at the cultural level, and it's all based on what do they value in terms of professions and careers, and what role does the family unit play when it comes to influencing decisions of the young people that they might guide, mentor, or maybe push off in the wrong direction.
Providing that kind of family perspective of it. I mean, I've encountered in my own communities and as my life as an educator, a lot of parents that think that there's a single critical path for people to have success in technology, and that's to become a software developer. And being able to educate and provide that there are multiple ways to succeed in a technology industry career beyond just learning how to code. And that's something that when we think about the content of the audience, there's also the secondary audience of having their family unit or parents or their own mentors be accelerators based on the subject matter, be able to take that and be able to help educate those that are trying to mentor them as well.
That's a great point, Doug and Tony here. Another thing I was curious, Melissa, is for this, do you have an incubator? Like, is there an organization set up? Because one thing I could see is having some kind of standard or some kind of bench level of what kind of technology is available and what makes sense, right? Have local telecoms been present or, approached to see if they can get involved with this at all, right? To have some kind
we've
of...
approached the GSMA, and we're waiting to hear back. So we've identified an opportunity. We presented a proposal. They're reviewing our proposal now, and we're waiting to hear back. But I do envision that there will be other opportunities beyond that, and we're currently going through the phase of saying, but it's kind of like we want to make sure that we've got something built to give them, because we're building it right now. We're kind of building we're flying the plane while we're building it. But no, I love that idea. And if you've got specific telcos that you've worked with in the past that you would recommend us talking to, I'm thinking more on the lines of the mobile operators, because in the markets where we're going to be working in, it's going to make more sense for us to be with the mobile operators. Could be with the ISPs, the wireless guys, but I'm thinking more mobile operators is kind of
well, and SpaceX has and I don't know where they're at within Africa, but I know in Canada and US they've already put in requests so that they can provide ISP with these new satellites they've launched, right?
That's a good idea. Let's definitely talk about that. And I would see a variety of different partnerships coming about, whether that's them using the platform to teach, people using it themselves to teach, working with the different ministries of ICT or education, and then aligning with a number of different ISPs from a partnership perspective. I know that we are, we got a few minutes left. I want to make sure that we get to the question piece of this so
Sure.
we can
Yeah,
start
and just
firing off questions. So go ahead.
real quick, Mel, just for everyone's benefit. So the things you have going for you is, so they just opened up, the licenses, that they're bringing in new telecoms. It used to be a government controlled telecommunication network, but the Vodafones, the Orange, MTNs, they're coming, coming in now in the next, few months. We are working with SES Satellite. So SES Satellite actually is presently involved. And then they've got SatMed, which is a joint venture with the Luxembourg government, which is bringing open source kind of telemedicine, teleeducation capabilities. So it's a prime time, for that country with it, particularly in telecommunications, open access and universal access.
Exactly. And I wonder, Steve, if, SES, as we get this built, I know we need to show them something, and we're still, again, we're flying the plane while we're building it, but I wonder if SES might be interested in hearing about what we're building and maybe doing something that enables, some kind of access in partnership with them. Do you think that that's something that they might be interested in exploring?
Absolutely, they would be. So absolutely.
Okay.
And then they, like I said, they have this SatMed platform. It includes open source kind of education tool. I can send you some, but they'd absolutely be interested in, and I'd be happy to facilitate that.
Yeah, that would be great if we could get a conversation together. I want to have some kind of something I can show them, and that's why I've been a bit hesitant to start, really going full in on, some of the, mobile operator satellite, low orbit satellite conversations is, they want to see something. They want to see more than an idea, and I think part of this is saying, hey, here's what we've got in terms of idea. Here's what we're thinking about. What are we missing?
And then, other thing, just for everyone's benefit, there's lots of reasons Ethiopia is very strategic, but with this prime minister they have there, who's just breaking all kinds of new ground and opening up things that weren't open before. Don't forget it's the headquarters of the African Union is in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa. So it's really become this country that's kind of potentially kind of the shining light in Africa in terms of potential models that can be replicated. And it's a great place to demonstrate. So a lot of people are setting up shop in Addis Ababa now, whether it's digital hubs, incubators, all these kind of activities, because I think genuinely people see that there's great potential in demonstrating there that can influence other markets across the continent.
Yeah, so I think let's move on to the next slide, which I think is the questions slide, if I'm not mistaken. Do I have that right?
Yep, you're right.
Okay, so it's a feedback loop. So I'd like to actually open it up, and I know we don't have Bethy, but Lily, I'd like to open it up to you. I know that, this is something passionate, passionate topic for you, with your background in tech, and then now you're, kind of focused on marketing. I know we've been talking about, Ethiopia, but in my mind, this is something I think that is, also a challenge in Ghana. So tell me, as an African youth, as a youth in Ghana, a young person in Ghana, what do you think about what we've been talking about, and how do you think this resonates for you? Lily, can you hear us?
I think she might have dropped off, unfortunately.
Okay. Do you want to turn it to the instead of having the feedback loop page, you want to turn on everybody's kind of camera so we can see everybody, and then we can kind of just have a conversation?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Doug. Hold on, I'll turn my camera back on. So Hema, I know you're an expert when it comes to audiences, and I imagine that maybe you're looking for kind of that buyer persona or that structure, which I've talked through some of it versus having it on some slides. But what would you recommend that we kind of take on and do from here?
One important thing to do also is to know how they search for information, because if they don't have internet in some areas, when they need to search and they need to find information and to know what is there, how they do it. Where do they go? Where do they try to find the information? This is important to show them the product there.
So the discovery of the opportunity to get the information.
Sorry?
Okay.
The discovery of it. How do they discover this information?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is really important to know if they read the newspaper or if they watch it on TV, because you need to know where they search for information to be there.
Yeah. So how do they find out about us? You know, if, we talked about, having something preloaded, but if that doesn't happen, or if they happen to buy a phone that isn't coming from a mobile operator, where do they find out about this? Is it word of mouth? Is it through school? Is it through the internet? Is it through, social media advertising? I see we have Lily back.
Yep, Lily,
Welcome back, Lily. I wanted to just ask you, Lily, as a young person, on the continent, I know we've been talking about Ethiopia, based on my conversations in Ghana, it seems like, digital skills, entrepreneurship, a platform that resonates at the local level might be interesting, but tell us what you think. Can you hear us, Lily?
Yes, I can hear you. If you can hear me too. Can you
Yes.
hear
Yeah,
me?
we can hear you now.
Yep.
Right. So sorry, my network is tripping, but I'll try and make this brief and concise. So I when the conversation started, I was preparing inputs in my head to give, but it turns out this is well studied. It's actually everything about the setting in Africa, especially because almost like you mentioned, the situation is not the same, but there are similarities, and it's very true. So just like you've done the studies, you're going the right way. So Doug was mentioning how you are first starting off with a global approach and diving into the specifics and looking at the age groups and all that you've realized. I think it's true. And one thing for digital skills actually in Africa is there's more of the shift, because of system continuity and sustainability. Beyond the skills, you're looking to have the holistic grooming. So that's why I like the mention of entrepreneurial skills also added, so that you're able to have the skills, but also able to play as an entrepreneur, able to land jobs, able to play anywhere. And that's one of the roles I play, actually matching the skills to the market, if you can hear me. And then one other thing, right, is if you playing here in Africa, normally to get singles or to get like single people to interact with is normally hard. So I like that you also mentioned partnerships, that you're able to reach a community. Once they get the idea and are able to communicate exactly to their following, then everybody catches the buzz. And it's very essential because of the different personas and pathways. So people have different ways of interacting with communities, interacting with things that get started. And the earlier you realize that there are different, and the earlier you realize that there are different people and different approaches that can pick, that can actually get their interest up there, the better for the team that is working. And that's one thing that we should look at it when coming to Africa. And the resources here are quite varying. We know that infrastructure actually is one of the underlying problems. So the very common thing you'd get here are mobile phones. People, what you do now is you rely on collaborative spaces, open communities, so people are able to share resources, because you cannot have everybody having good internet at home, having good laptops at home. So normally you use the idea of the shared resources in open spaces to reach out to the audience and to actually get the community leaders to communicate the message in ways that actually resonates with them. So
that's exactly right. And I'm glad you're mentioning that, because that's exactly why we started partnering together with Steve as he looks at his, smart village strategy, as he looks at building internet connectivity and energy access in these communities, that we work with local leaders, local community development organizations that already have a footprint at the local level, and really having a user-centered design approach where, we are, not building it and then throwing it in, but working collaboratively on the ground with local leaders and local community development organizations,
For sure, Melissa. I can see almost like, there's a lot of value Toastmasters. It allows people to go and talk and present different things. You could almost have like a Melissa Masters kind of thing focused on fostering that kind of community and involvement, and having some people contribute to how do they convey that message, or how do they, the soft skills, right? I think Lily was talking to that, right? where it's more not just about here's some hard tech that you can deliver, but what is that? What does that experience mean to somebody who maybe is creative, right? And they're looking at doing something digitally. What does that mean? It's not just about ones and zeros and coding, right?
Right.
There's
That's
a
really
lot more.
So Mel, the other thing that, struck me a little bit ago, we were just sitting here and I'm thinking about this, is, if you just think about what you're doing now, this XTP platform and how you're doing this, where you're taking an entrepreneur with basically kind of mentor approach, and you're communicating your plans, your things that your plan as an entrepreneur. Imagine like if you took this platform concept and implemented it in a village, meaning, if the XTP platform is kind of the model of teaching and training and lifting up entrepreneurs, because what does that mean? Well, first off, you have to be connected for us to have this interaction. Okay, so that's a force function of some kind of digital connectivity in one way, shape, or form. But then where these village level people, without putting any preconditions on them, saying that they have to be certain level of skill or whatever, but just identifying passionate villagers that might have their own entrepreneurial ideas and just need guidance and mentorship, but is starting from where they're at, not trying to move them to somewhere else. And where, imagine just like a villager in very rural place who can get connected and has this kind of mentor XTP approach, and they're a female shop owner, a female doing sewing or whatever that is, and just giving them a platform to talk to people about what they're doing and how they'd like to improve, and here's what they're doing. Do you have ideas? So, one interesting thing I was thinking about, like, what if you just did this XTP model in a village, like, and instead of Melissa
Well, that would be
Sassi,
a hell of a lot of fun. And instead of me
instead of
doing
Melissa
it, there's like
Sassi,
a
it's
local
like a
leader.
rural village that has a business owner, okay,
Yeah.
that has her little shop, and she has these mentors overseeing her, and there's this kind of continuous process that they keep improving, and you can watch her potentially start from this non-tech shop owner, and all of a sudden move over here, and she's got who knows what over a course of time. So just just something that hit me. I'm thinking, I mean, maybe you have something here just in the platform we're on to
Oh,
think
I
about
love
how
that. That could be super cool.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, Doug, go ahead.
The formation of the the spirit of what we're trying to do, then the industry can sometimes be irrelevant, and you can still be valuable for wherever you're going to be doing this in that community.
Yeah, because in villages, everyone is an entrepreneur. There is nothing other than entrepreneurs in villages. They are all 100% entrepreneurs. So it's just, if you give them a platform, whether it's a farmer, a shop owner, a seamstress, a this or that, but just take them on a path from whatever it is they're doing, and have some mentorship to improve that, what they're doing, that learning and training, and give them things to go back and work on, but mentor them, but let them be the ones that are improving their activities that they're doing. Just, I mean,
So
it's
the
just
XTP Village, the XTP Village
yeah.
Hustle.
I mean, you might
like
be
it.
onto something just in the platform itself. Okay?
Right.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I always struggle with how do we have such a meaningful conversation and get through anything or everything. Lala, as a young person, I don't know, would this be something that would be like interesting and fun for you based on your personal circumstance? I know we're talking about Ethiopia, but I don't know. Tell me, you as a young person, you haven't been able to go to school, you haven't been able to do all the things you want to do, and your life has significantly changed. Like, what would you do with something like this? Is it
Absolutely. And I think online at the moment, as Doug was saying earlier, there are so many platforms, so it can be extremely overwhelming to decide which one to do. Often they're really text heavy or too much multimedia, so finding that right balance is exactly what's needed. Also, on the topic of soft skills and beyond coding, I think that's something that needs to be discussed with like the local Department of Education, because for example, we'll do our hour of code, but then beyond that, people just see computer science as that really nerdy kind of topic which people see as a boundary, so they won't want to develop the professional skills, and they don't realize just how much digital literacy is important. So perhaps later on in life, doing an hour of code on the XTP platform or something is a better alternative to consider.
Understood. Neil, anything to add before I cut everybody loose?
I'm just waiting for the helicopter to disappear that's flying over. Been in lockdown for months, and all of a sudden there's a load of air traffic. Bear with me 1 second. Crazy. So yeah, I do. I think soft skills are a big part of any kind of entrepreneurship moving forward. There's nothing like having access to people and their experiences who have done this before, regardless of where they are or what culture it is. People tend to make the same mistakes again. But when we talk about countries like Ethiopia and others, slightly underdeveloped with the technology, in the UK, we have this motto, obviously, with startups: fail fast and often, quickly, right? You don't have that option, right? You don't have that option where in Ethiopia. In fact, the word failure should be rubbed down. You need to try and get it right first time if possible. And I think there's a lot of things around technology that literally are geared around people to fail in their companies when they start up a tech company. It's you can never understate or underplay the access to people who have done it before. And I'm not just talking about myself, I'm talking about anybody in general, and taking on board that experience. Because when I was 15, I wish I had access to people that had done it multiple times, or have at least have an insight of a business, or starting a business, or have run a business. It's a daunting challenge regardless of any culture. And I think if you can have a platform that can link into that regardless of the country, the benefits are massive.
Awesome. Anything else that anyone would like to add that you haven't had a chance to, share yet in terms of go-dos, recommendations, as we continue on in our journey? And it is a journey, and we're on a journey of like, at least in terms of what we initially planned out for the XTP Hustle, at least this show, not necessarily some of the awesome ideas that Steve gave us, but doing this over a 26-week period, 13 episodes. This is the 3rd episode, and we're going to continue to refine everything, where the final day we look to do some kind of demo day and invite investors and VCs and people who might actually be interested in collaborating, either financially or partnership wise or whatever. Anything else anyone would like to share before we cut you loose and talk about the next XTP Hustle episode?
I mean, one just last thing I just comment on that train of thought I had before is just see yourself, Mel, right now as that rural village woman that's on a path. Okay. So, and keep tabs as you are making your progress through this on this platform. And think about, you might have a platform here that is, it could be a part of the business itself. Okay. So I just want you to think about that. Like, you're starting, session 1 to session, whatever this is, 26, you started somewhere and you're going to end somewhere. And you're going through a learning and educational process and skill training. And you are that kind of village woman, let's call it village entrepreneur. And you've got this kind of group of elders or mentors that are, you're taking on the journey with you. Okay. And
I love it. The village incubator,
Yeah, and see if something like you're doing there, because I can envision, like, literally, I'm just seeing this like rural village woman that's got a shop that doesn't have any infrastructure, no tech, no nothing, but somehow gets connected into this platform somehow, some way. And then over time, at the other end, she comes out and she's got this incredible business and maybe multiple businesses or something, because of the mentorship and the leadership oversight.
And then in turn is able to be a mentor themselves.
And then it multiplies and it multiplies and it multiplies.
And it's a really exciting opportunity to have advice to do it right? Where, like, you can start cloud native, you can start security by design, you can start all these good technical things, and at the same time you can start soft skills, you can start encouragement and networking opportunities.
Yeah.
A lot of exciting things.
Yeah, if you think of technology as just connecting people and people working together, that's as much as it needs to do to have a huge, significant impact. Sometimes people want to cut people out and make technology the answer. technology is just get us connected so that we can work together to get to a better solution.
Yeah, totally agree. People are the answer. It's how technology is used to best meet those things and objectives that people are trying
Don't try to use technology to cut people out. It's the biggest mistake people have been making. So we're in such a mess that we're in.
Yep. All right, gang. We got to run. I am 12 minutes late for a meeting with my boss, and she
Same with
doesn't know
me.
where I am. So, all right, everyone.
Blame it on me. Blame it on me.
No,
Yeah.
it's all good. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining the XTP Hustle. We will have another one in 2 weeks. So if anyone is interested in joining future episodes, you are always welcome as a mentor. Steve, you are definitely being roped in, and Lella, you're just with us no matter what. So thank you again for all the valuable insight. You know, I heard a lot of really wonderful things in terms of, you know, how do we think about the stuff that is, you know, culturally relevant? How do we think about collaboration with mobile operators or satellite providers? How do people find out about us? And how do we really resonate at the local level when it comes to word of mouth or marketing? You know, how do we really look at this platform at the village level? And does this actually become part of our, you know, product? And how do we reverse the roles in the sense of us actually thinking about Lissa as the village, you know, woman, Doug as the village dude? You know, what does this look like? Thank you, everyone.
I like the sound of that, village dude. I like that.
Village dude.
I can get behind.
All right. We will see you on the next XTP Hustle.
Does that make us the village people?
Oh,
so
I've got NASA.
Someone had to get that joke in.
On that
Steve
note,
did a funny.
control
Steve
the end
did a
button.
funny. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Have a
Thank you.
wonderful